News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. There's your closing bell for this Friday on Wall Street, where traders drove stocks higher in a mega cap rally. We bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 65 points. NASDAQ gained 195. The Dow gained 493 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.06%. The 2-year yield at 3.5%. Now, Bitcoin's been crashing into some dangerous territory, and options-fueled selling is adding to the volatility. That sell-off deepened throughout today as part of the sell-off, erasing about 25% of Bitcoin's value this month. Bitcoin right now more than 3% lower. It's bouncing around $84,000. President Trump is hosting New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani at the White House this afternoon. Trump called that meeting productive.
We had discussions on some things. I'm not going to discuss what they were, but that I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually. And some very liberal people he won't surprise them because they already like him.
Trump and Mamdani focused more on their shared goals, with President Trump saying that he shares some of Mamdani's ideas for New York City. President Trump's team is holding early discussions on whether to allow Nvidia to sell its H200 AI chips to China. This would mark a major departure from the Trump administration's earlier public stances on semiconductor export controls and could represent a concession to Beijing. Former National Security Advisor and Director of the Harvard Belfer Center, Megan O'Sullivan, tells Bloomberg's Balance of Power this could be giving up an advantage for the U.S.
America still has a substantial lead, and keeping high-end chips from China for as long as we can is probably in our national security interest.
You can hear the entire interview with former National Security Advisor Megan O'Sullivan on the Balance of Power podcast. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy says his country is facing one of the toughest periods in its history. He says he cannot accept parts of a 28-point peace plan the U.S. has been working on with Russia, and Ukraine's biggest European allies have also rejected key elements of the plan. The U.S. has threatened to stop intelligence sharing and weapons supplies to Ukraine unless Kyiv agrees to the peace plan by Thursday. And Russia says it has the plan now and is ready for talks, but Russian President Vladimir Putin says they're also ready to keep fighting if they can't come to an agreement with Ukraine. Consumer sentiment has hit one of the lowest levels on record as Americans' views of their personal finances have soured to a 16-year low. Joanne Shu is Michigan's Director of Consumer Surveys.
Right now, consumers perceive quite a bit of weakness in the economy. And certainly if they were to get any extra cash in their pocketbooks, they would absolutely welcome it. But when that cash runs out, if the situation hasn't materially changed, they will continue to be frustrated about high prices.
Joanne Shu with the University of Michigan appeared on Bloomberg Television. Earlier this month, it looked like a Fed rate cut in December was nearly a sure thing, but since then the odds have shifted. More FOMC members are talking about persistent inflationary pressures. Boston Fed President Susan Collins tells Bloomberg's Odd Lots she needs more data.
If I were seeing evidence that the labor market were notably deteriorating, I would take that very seriously, and that certainly could justify near-term additional easing.
Hear more from Boston Fed President Susan Collins on the Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast. Fed Governor Stephen Miran tells Bloomberg News economic data since the last FOMC meeting should, in his words, push in the dovish direction.
There hasn't been anything in the data, in the news, in media stories, in private sector data, alternative data that's available to us, that would make us think that the forecast is somehow nullified and there's been a big shock to it. So if anything, all the information that we've got in the interim since September FOMC has inclined to the dovish side.
Hear more from Fed Governor Stephen Miran on the Bloomberg Surveillance podcast. Dallas Fed President Lori Logan says it would be appropriate to hold rates steady at the December meeting. She spoke at an event in Zurich. New York Fed President John Williams says he sees room for another cut. Investors now see about a 65% probability of a rate cut at the December meeting. That's up from around 45% before Williams spoke today. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.